marketing haven't changed, price, product, promotion in place. Those have remained the same. And those will probably really start, we're going to start focusing on those as tactics for our group project after the midterm. So those are going to be the things that we're just, so tactically you'll be able to tell. And those have remained the test of time. And, but what's changed is speed and content. And one of the things I like to do is take a fresh topic that exists that's just on the news, because in a 10-week period, while the short time we're together, things can happen very quickly in the marketing world. And Dunkin' is not disappointing us. And as you know, when we started off, the big news was Dunkin' Donuts changed their name. They rebranded, they dropped the donut name, and now they're just Dunkin'. And they do that for a reason. And we're discovering that reason as we process the class. They also picked up Snoop Dogg as a spokesman, and that's an interesting topic. So as we start discovering brands and how brand equity can work, we'll be able to understand why they're doing what they're doing. Now, it may not work. Dunkin's strategy may not work. On the other hand, I wouldn't be at all surprised if they have an ad on the Super Bowl Sunday. We're going to have to see what happens. But here's the Dunkin' update for the week, or for today. I want to play it, and I want to discuss this just a little bit with you as we go.
Given the pumpkin spice hysteria we witness every fall, it's not surprising the pumpkin spice latte is Starbucks' most popular seasonal release. There are some surprising things you might not know about the drink, though, some of which you might wish you never heard. Let's pull the lid off this fall-flavored treat. When the world fell head over heels in love with Starbucks pumpkin spice latte over a decade ago, there was not a single teaspoon of real pumpkin to be found in the concoction. But in 2014, thanks in part to controversial blogger Vani Hari, aka the Food Babe, who brought this piece of scandalous information front and center, consumers took issue. This revelation shouldn't have been too surprising, considering that what we acknowledge as pumpkin-flavored is typically just a mixture of spices. But still, the pressure was on to get some actual pumpkin into the pumpkin spice latte. But does real pumpkin puree mixed with coffee even work? In 2015, Starbucks proved that it does when they revamped the latte's recipe and added real pumpkin.
Hey there, can we do 2 pink velvet signature lattes, please?
What size?
Medium, please.
Hot or ice?
I'll do ice, please. What, did you want anything else?
Anything else?
That'll be it for today.
We'll put it around.
Awesome, thank you.
No problem.
Oh my god!
Hello guys, it's Rachel. So we just pulled up to Dunkin' and they have a pink velvet drink for Valentine's Day. Here's my free drink coupon.
Okay.
Oh my god, I'm so excited. I've never been big on like red velvet actually, so I'm very excited, but it had the word pink in it, so I was like, we already know it's gonna be a serve. Is it pretty?
Yeah, it's like pinky.
Is it really?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. They're putting chocolate drizzle on it. Oh, hell yeah.
Consider this. A tall pumpkin spice latte made with 2% milk and topped with whipped cream contains a whopping 39 grams of sugar, 11 grams of fat, and 300 calories. Need some context? The American Heart Association recommends limiting your daily added sugar intake to 25 grams for women and 36 grams for men. So with one 12-ounce drink, you've consumed more than your share for the day. Maybe it's a good thing the PSL is only available for a few months of the year. What is it about the Starbucks pumpkin spice latte that makes us weak in the knees? For that answer, we need to look to the brain. According to NBC News health and nutrition editor Madeline Fernstrom, there are 3 reasons we can't quit the PSL. First of all, fat plus sugar scientifically equals bliss. Fernstrom says that the combination of fat and sugar basically do a dance on our taste buds and cause flavors to be more intense, particularly the nutmeg, clove, and cinnamon. Add in a hefty dose of salt, or as Fernstrom calls it, nature's most powerful food enhancer, and those flavors are amped up even more. The bottom line is simple. People love tasty drinks, and taste is number 1 on why people choose foods.
Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. Let's take a thumbnail.
We got layers. Wow.
It tastes like, it's not bad at all. Yum.
Wow. What does this remind me of? I feel like I'm drinking a flower.
A flower?
Like rose.
Okay, so what's going on here, right? What's going on here? 4 weeks in to the term, we've got obvious things going on. First of all, right? Starbucks led the market in creating the premium coffee drink. They developed that market. And then they had the promotion of the pumpkin spice latte, which is now their #1 drink. So they created value in the premium coffee drink category. And they've had that market. And but what happens in a free market? What happens in a free market is if somebody establishes a product or a service where they're getting a monopoly price for, what happens? We know what happens because we've studied the economics. People will come in and try to offer a better value at a lower price to try to compete for that product and gain the same reputation, right? So we have Starbucks over here. Now we have Dunkin' Donuts dropping the donut name, becoming Dunkin' because they're interested in not being associated with just donuts. And what does Dunkin' do? Dunkin' just launched, it hasn't physically, but there was 2 videos on YouTube this morning. It hasn't been launched yet, but it's going to be launched February 1st, this red velvet macchiato or whatever it's going to be for Valentine's Day. Now, this is a perfect example of what they're trying to do in a market, because they realized, of course, that Starbucks had something. Starbucks hit a chord with the public. They came out with latte and cappuccino. They created this whole market, this big market that they had for people that wanted this premium coffee. And Dunkin' has the physical structure. They've got a lot of units all around, and they want to compete for that product. So what do? Well, it's pretty clever what they've actually done. Now, we don't know exactly why they hired Snoop Dogg. We're still thinking about that, right? Their jury's out. We're not sure, because Snoop Dogg's, it's hard to figure out what he has to do with Dunkin' yet. I mean, he's the guy that we know what he's about, but we're not sure. But we do know that for example, when Dunkin' comes out with a Valentine's Day red velvet whatever, what they're thinking about is, can they create the same amount of value that the pumpkin spice latte created and gain their position as a destination place? And I don't know, because it actually hasn't launched yet, but we're going to see. We'll see the results. We'll see what's going to happen, because as I say, product life cycles and speed and content are being squeezed in this market. So we're going to see exactly what they have. The other part that I thought was interesting about the video was this whole notion that how many people have had a pumpkin spice latte? Raise your hand. Okay. Is it good? I mean, is it? Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay, I'm not a coffee drinker. I stopped drinking coffee. I don't know why. I just stopped one. I was on a diet and I stopped drinking it, and I never picked it up again. But I'll walk up to the neighborhood Starbucks with my wife in Sellwood in the morning, and they've got their own language, right? When they order, give me the blah 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 with this and that and the other thing. I've lost. I'm completely out of that whole neck of the woods. But the bottom line is that Starbucks creates a product. People love the product. It's the largest drink in the category. But then all of a sudden, what happened? Well, if you look at the sugar content and you look at all this stuff, it's from a health perspective, you're putting a gun to your head. Huh? How dare Starbucks do this to us? How dare they? Shouldn't we report them to the sugar police? Or the Food and Drug Administration? Or the Consumer Product Safety Commission? Well, that's a decision we make as a society, right? if I want to go in and I want to drink this thing and it makes me happy, where are we? That's the ones you want to think about. That's the idea, because we are creating. Nobody put a gun to anybody's head and said you got to go in and get a pumpkin spice latte. Nobody did that. These people did that. Now, Dunkin' is doubling down. Dunkin's got their own. It probably has more sugar in it. We don't know. We'll find out. But this will be good for us to talk about next week, because this is the point I'm trying to make here is markets are moving very, very fast. The other question is we should have we'll have a poll. We won't get to it today, but we'll have a poll. And what is Starbucks' reaction going to be to Dunkin' taking potentially some of their market share away? What are they going to do? Are they going to come up with something for Valentine's? This is the way the market works, right? This is the way it goes. And you need to understand this, because the dynamic in it is the only people that survive in a free market are really, really people that have really, really great products at really, really good prices and really value. And if you don't do that, you're looking at losing everything. So we'll watch. So we'll have our Dunkin' update next week. I thought that would be important for everybody to see. Now today, what we're going to do is we're going to simulate. Remember, I told you that the environment, the reason why this class is important and the reason why the group project is important is because I want you to understand what real life is all about and how to create markets and how to get people to buy into what you're doing. Because I think that this will be, regardless of what your major is, the ability for you to get together with other people and convince them that you're right is a very, very strong tool that will make you a lot of money and will make you happy in the future. So what we're going to do is we want to leverage that. And the way we're going to work it today is we have two guest speakers from the Friends of Tillamook Air Museum, and they're going to go on after I'm going to go on. And I'm going to be, the way we're going to play this is I'm going to be like the president of the company. And Tillamook Air Museum has hired us to come up with a marketing plan. And you're my staff, okay? And I'm going to give you some information about, general information about the Port of Tillamook. And I'm going to actually reinforce what some of the stuff we've learned up till now, and that'll engage that and for you. Then I'm going to do that, and then we're going to have our guests up, and they're going to do a presentation, and then we're going to have a panel discussion if we can. So one of the things I want you to do is I've opened up a discussion on Top Hat. And if you go into your Top Hat, you'll see an open discussion. And what that means is that if you have any questions or you have a comment to make, you can make that in the discussion module that I'll get up here at the front of the front here. And if, for example, you see a comment or a question that's been asked and that you like it, it'll sift it and it'll make the question go up to the top. So what we want to do is I'm going to present as if I was your boss. And the Tillamook Air Museum just paid us a lot of money to make this thing happen. So I'm going to rely on you to come out with the answer, and I'm going to give you some information to reinforce what we've already learned. And then I'm going to bring the client up, and the client is going to tell you in particular what the actual museum is, a little bit of the history, and then we're going to have a chat, and then we're going to see how it goes. Does everybody understand that? Okay, so feel free to pop in on the discussion module, and if you have any questions, because I'm sure a lot of these questions will come up, we can get other questions answered for you as the term progresses. We may even have our friends back here before the end. They'll certainly come back and judge the Shark Tank. So does that make sense to everybody? Okay, all right. Now, I'm the vice president, or I'm the president. I'll make myself the president. I'm the president of this company, and I've got 40 groups working for me on this project. And today, you were all supposed to have put in a video of 3 out-of-the-box ideas. So When I get home tonight, I'm going to rush home, I'm going to open a nice bottle of red wine, and I'm going to drink my red wine, and I'm going to watch all your out-of-the-box ideas, and I'm going to make comments on them. So we have 120 ideas before you've even seen what we're doing, which is really good from a brainstorming position, because from now on what will happen is you're going to listen to the Tillamook people, you're going to listen to me, and we're going to sway your, we're going to paint a picture that is going to lead you in directions. And what you need to do is think about this as the idea that you're going to, the group that can create the most value with the most compelling marketing argument, if you will, is going to win. So think of it this way. Here's a better way to think about it. I've hired all you guys. I've got 40 groups working on the project. One group is going to get an A, and everybody else is going to flunk. We're not going to do that. But in business, that's kind of the way it works. So this is the way I want you to think about it. Okay. So one of the things you have to understand about ports and ports of Tillamook in particular is the micro environment. We talked about the micro environment, right? Because you could come up with the greatest marketing plan in the world, but if you're in a situation where you're like Kodak, remember we talked about Kodak, you could you could have the greatest plan in the world, but if you have a hostile marketing environment, you're screwed. So what I want to do is explain to you the research that I've done, and these guys aren't in the room. Pretend they're not in the room. And I've just done this research on my own because the Port of Tillamook is a public entity. It's kind of like a school board. It's a public entity that has elected people, and these guys have the power to make decisions relative to the port's business, okay? I'm just going to now give you a little bit of an overview on how that looks. The most important thing are the port commissioners. Why? Because they are, in fact, the board of directors. They are the ones that vote on who gets to spend money, what projects go forward, who they hire, these are the big decision makers. These are the people that make all. And these folks are elected. Just like if you wanted to be on the school board, you were, you run for an election. So in a way, it's a pretty democratic way to look at it. So the first thing is if you want to look at your micro environment, it's helpful to look at the people that are in charge, right? Okay, let's just go through this, and I want to go through this with you, and I want to give you an idea, at least my biases or what my feelings are about each one of these members. I've never met any of them. I've never met anyone. Now, let's take the first guy, this guy. He's the president of the board. I think the president has some extra, power or whatever, but generally it's a majority vote, and that's why they have 5 people on the board, is because they vote on stuff, and the majority wins. Now, this fella is, he's the president of the board. Now, he's the director of engineering for the Tillamook Creamery Association. And he's been there about 30 years. So this guy's an old-time Tillamook guy. So my guess is that this guy is probably going to be an ally of ours, right? I don't think Tillamook views anything we do with the Tillamook Air Museum as being competition with them because they got the largest tourist attraction in the state of Oregon. Now, it may come to some point in the future where people want to go to Tillamook Air Museum and they don't want to go to that may be possible. But that's an important thing. So this fella probably is what we would consider in the business world an ally. He's a guy with any reasonable plan that we come up with, he would probably want to see something go on. This next fella is the vice president. He's retired. He's a marine scientist, and he's an old-timer as well. He's been around Tillamook a long time. I don't know much about him. He wasn't on LinkedIn. but he seems, he's wants to be there, so that's all I know about this fella. This fella, all these three people are very new to the board. This fella's in property management. This person is a dentist. And this person here works for an interesting thing called the Tillamook Estuaries Partnership, which is actually, I think, their office is right next to our seaweed farm in Garibaldi. And they are responsible for looking at all the estuaries up and down and then making sure that collecting data and doing something like that. So she would be interested in things that appealed to stuff that didn't ruin the environment, right? I think you know, you could assume that she's someone that wants to have something very nice. Not, you know, I don't think, for example, I don't think if you recommended that we turn the Tillamook Air Museum into an atomic nuclear reactor, she may not. This may be one vote you didn't get. You see, right? So we want to, and this is really important because this is reality. This is reality. And if you look at, I've been through a lot of businesses, and there's a lot of people that fail products not because they haven't thought it through and not because they don't have a great marketing plan. It's just the timing wasn't good. 10 years ago, if I had mentioned that I thought seaweed would be a market in the United States, people would have thought I was crazy. Timing, that's the important thing. Okay. Now, we talked about mission statements, right? We talked about mission statements. This is the mission statement of the Board of Tillamook. It's a very broad, general mission statement that says, kind of, we're going to do good things for the community, we're going to be well managed, and we're going to get along with everybody, we're going to be happy, and we're going to support development. So pretty much generic, right? There's nothing really offensive here. This is fine. Then we go to their vision. And remember, when we were talking about this, I was talking about trends and uncertainties. And trends, of course, are things that are going to happen whether we decide to do anything about them or not. And uncertainties is we don't know what's going to happen, but they could affect our business. So one of the things that I want to point out here is their first part was to maintain and improve existing facilities. Well, that helps us out, right? Because the Tillamook Air Museum is an existing facility. As a matter of fact, if they wanted to get rid of the Tillamook Air Museum, I've heard estimates up to $10 or $15 million just to get rid of it. If they wanted to shut it down, close the doors, you know, let's say, here's a great example. Instead of, if the Tillamook people, if they had gone to the University of Oregon, to their marketing department, they would have come up with a stupid idea. And then they would have had to have shut the thing down because no customers would have come. And that would have cost them $10 million. They want to encourage new business about, what does that mean? They want to leverage the assets that they have, right? What they basically have done is they inherited, the Tillamook port inherited an old naval air base with a lot of land, a lot of buildings, and that kind of thing. So they like to leverage that. They'd like to get the value out of the land. They like to lease property, and they want to have businesses, right? And, you know, that's one of the things, and that makes a lot of sense. This is a new kind of a buzzword, is these clustered businesses where, you know, they're talking about this in in aquaculture in Oregon. They're talking about setting up these facilities like at the Port of Port Orford, where the government comes in and builds a big building, and then they lease these things out, these aquaculture things, so people can get into the business with less risk, right? That's another one. So that makes sense. Then they want to have flexible, and they want to look at new and emerging markets, right? Because that's something that if you invest time in an emerging market, the chances are the tenant is going to be there for a long period of time. And responsibility for the assets. Okay, now this will give you a little picture of the economics of the port. This is the revenue each one of these departments has created. Okay, and I want to point out a couple things in this slide. This is the museum. They're all around about the same amount of revenue. Looks like the airport gets the most, and they're all around the same revenue. But what I want to point out is, this is what we're concentrating on, is the museum, right? It's the largest free span building in the world, wood building. That's what we're focusing on. But this is the other parts of this thing. They've got an airport right there. An airport. You can fly into it. Maybe you can fly into it and see the museum. I don't know. Where can you fly from there? It's worth researching, isn't it? They have a railroad. My understanding is it isn't much of a railroad. However, a railroad with a good marketing plan associated, who knows? They have utilities. They make money selling utilities to their clients. Here's the museum, and here's the administration. That's fees and whatever. So that gives you an idea of what they're doing. So the point I'm making here is, this is a big deal. The museum is a big deal to the port. If it went away, if the revenue went away, this would be a problem for them. Be losing 20% of its sales, or something close to that. Okay, now let's talk specifically about the museum. I'm not going to get into our guest talk, because they've got a different slant on this, but I want to explain to you that the biggest thing that happened to the museum was in 2015. There was this rich guy called Erickson, and he had donated a bunch of planes to the Tillamook Air Museum. And they had that building filled with planes, all different kinds of planes. And for whatever reason, in 2015, he wasn't treated right. The client, Tillamook Air Museum, wasn't nice to him, or maybe they jacked the rent up, or he wasn't getting his share of revenue. There was something that happened, and this guy got pissed. And he took all his planes, and he went over to Madras. Maybe the weather. You know how it is on the coast. Madras is nice all the time. But he took all his planes, and he put them over there. So in 2015, the Tillamook Air Museum lost half of its air, maybe more, half of its planes. Now, you'll learn this as you go, but, a building half full of stuff is not just a building half full of stuff, it's a building missing half of its stuff. And that's very easy for people to see when they walk in. But the good thing they did was they recognized this, and they set up an ad hoc committee called Friends of Tillamook Air Museum that are going to help correct the problem. And 2 of those members are here today to speak to us. Okay, now remember we talked early in this term about a SWOT analysis. And I don't want to spend a lot of time because I want to get to our guests. But they had this, and I wanted to reinforce this with you because I'll probably ask a couple questions on the midterm on this. So, and a SWOT analysis is an old analysis. It basically looks at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's a good way to look at how the business is. Now, the strengths are that it is a remote location, but it's only an hour and a half from the Portland metropolitan area. That's one. So it's easy for a day trip. You have access to natural areas. Tillamook is still a pretty relative low-cost area. It's not Cannon Beach. It's lower cost to live. It's cheaper if you want to, budget. It's big with natural resources, dairy industries, fishing, so if there's a way to leverage that. And it's right next to Highway 101, which is the highway that goes from Tijuana, Mexico to Canada. Weaknesses. Weaknesses are, number one, it's got vacant and commercial, and this is not me making this. This is up their published website. You can go to the website and get this data. This is them. They have vacant commercial lands in poor locations. They've got a lot of vacant land. And you know the way it is, it's generally kind of like one of these things where, it's a chicken or the egg thing. You need an anchor client to get other clients. So they're in that sort of dead zone. They have lack of infrastructure, although they have railway. And if you're interested in putting that in your marketing, you're going to have to do a lot of research. I don't know what that's about, but they've lost a lot of infrastructure. There's a lack of cohesive strategy or branding. Ooh, branding! That's marketing. That's us. Thank God they didn't let U of O involved with this. We need to brand this idea. We need to brand it, and I haven't gotten to branding yet, but I want to. Branding, especially in today, is a very, very strong motivator. When you think of Nike, you don't think of the words Nike, you think of the swish. Branding. How can we brand this place so it's an absolute must to go to see? I didn't know this, but I guess so. You know, if you don't like the smell of dairy, you know, cow poo, I guess. Could be. Environmental use and land regulation. This is always a problem, right? It's always a problem when you're trying to develop because when you're trying to develop, you're developing in your own economic self-interest, and you're dealing with regulations and governments that create laws in a free market that everybody has to generally look out for the common public good. So we have to look at that as well. Opportunities. They said there's a potential for an unmanned aerial systems cluster. The reason for that is, I just discovered this, was that they have a Johnson Near-Earth space building there that's actually a commercial venture. And they take these balloons, and I don't know much about it, but they take these balloons that go way up in the atmosphere, and they do a lot of government contracts. It's kind of secretive. So, because I pulled in there, I was going to take a tour, and the machine guns. No, I'm just kidding. But it's something to think. It's something to take a look at. Also, there's production of agriculture, specialty agriculture, and of course, here's the big one. And tourism was proven, of course, by what? Tillamook Cheese Factory, 6 miles away, largest tourist attraction in the state of Oregon. And the threats, of course, we have threats. These are something to keep it thinking. We have earthquakes, tsunami, fire, weather. These are the ones, the uncertainties. Remember I talked about? These may happen or they may not happen. But if we have a tsunami that hits the coast of Oregon, we got a problem. Deferred maintenance of infrastructure. You saw the video. I showed our guests the video that we saw on Tuesday. You can see it's unfortunate we weren't able to get an actual trip out there. But the infrastructure is badly in need. To the point where BA390 is going to have to save the day. Because if we don't come up with the answer, they got a problem. They got a big problem. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? That's the way I've laid it out for you guys. Now, it's your job. Now, I don't want to just send you out cold into the world to try to come up with your own marketing plans. What we want to do is I wanted to bring in the clients, okay? Now, these are the clients, and these are the guys that are actually responsible for putting this all together. And they are going to give a short speech. And this is, if you have any questions, we'll have a panel discussion after that. But if you have any questions, please put them on the Top Hat discussion module, and we will make sure that we get that answered. So I'm going to fire this up. And now, today we're very, very fortunate to have both Bruce Loveland and John Tabor, who are not being paid any money to do this. Matter of fact, they even took me out to lunch today, which I'm very grateful. We went to McMinimans, got there at 11:30. It was okay, We got, and these fellas are part of the ad hoc committee these are the guys on the white horses with the hats, and they're going to save the day. And Bruce came to me about 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I don't remember. No, it was earlier before the holidays, and he had heard what we've been doing in seaweed, and our name's getting around on the coast with other projects like edible film technology and things like that. and Bruce took me out to this big building and asked me if there's something we could do. And this is before class started, and I had looked at the class printout, and I could tell there was really, really smart people in this class. So I said, we'll take this challenge. So what I want to do now is I want to bring Bruce up here, and I want him to give a little talk, and then we're going to set up here, and we're going to have a little round table or a little panel discussion where you guys can either ask normal questions or you can do it through Top Hat. I'll be monitoring the discussions. So without any further ado, let's give a big hand to Bruce and John from the Tillamook Air Museum.
You have a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask, is the discussion going to be on the classroom portion of Top Hat?
It should be. Let me check. It's open now. Oh, maybe it didn't. Okay, no, I just started. How's that? Is that? Should pop up right now. You see it now? Okay, cool.
Thank you, Chuck. My name is Bruce Lowe. John Tabor over here from, we're the Friends of Tillamook Air Museum. Just so you realize that whenever you get on a volunteer board like this, it's going to cost you money, just like it did for lunch today. I got stuck with the bill, so just recognize that. I also want to say that it's really great when Chuck invited me here because we had just fired the University of Oregon Marketing School because they just came back with no proposal at all. So Chuck is right on, and so it's going to be really good to hear what kinds of marketing plans that you guys come up with. Because I will say this, John and I and our Friends of Tillamook Air Museum board, we're kind of the last line of defense on this building. But I'm going to put the pressure on you. You're the ones that are going to really help us in whether or not this thing moves forward or not. And we're really looking forward to some really great creative ideas, out-of-the-box ideas. We're operating in this museum right now. Is that the right thing or not? Static displays, historic displays, is that the right thing? So let me give you a little history. So the backdrop of this is 1940, 1939. We just got sucked into World War II, 1941. And off the east coast of the U.S., submarines were in there. They were attacking our maritime ships going over to England, sinking a lot of them. They're right up along the shoreline, even up in the Gulf. And there was a concern that if we didn't do something to stop the destruction of those ships, that we're going to be in some real trouble, the U.S. and the Allies. We didn't have the problems necessarily on the West Coast at the time, but what happened was they decided to use airships, blimps, to go out and use those to patrol the waters off the Gulf, the East Coast, and the West Coast. And they constructed 17 of these huge hangars. 2 of them in Tillamook, 1 burnt down, but there's the one we still have now is in Tillamook. And what they would do is they'd load up maybe 9 people inside one of these airships on the gondola of that, and they would take off and they'd go out for 2 days and patrol the coast. And in our case, off of Tillamook, we patrol all the way from Seattle, up north of Seattle, all the way down to San Francisco. And because of these airships, the destruction of the sinking of the Allied ships really went down. Actually, it almost went down to 0. And this was called, as Chuck said, the Tillamook Naval Air Station. This is, it's one of the largest freestanding wood buildings. One of these, the second one, took longer to build, but the second one, they had the thing constructed in 29 days. Now, everything was assembled. They built trusses, all made out of Douglas fir, and they erected this thing in less than a month, the second one. But the first, there are 2 identical ones. It's over 1,000 feet long. It's 300 feet tall, or 200 feet tall, 100 feet wide, 300 feet wide. Just a big structure, and you can see what the blimps look like inside the structure. All right, Chuck, advance me.
Oh. Oh, that's probably because I did this. Okay, does it work now? Oh, there you go. Sorry.
Okay, that's fine. So the Air Museum right now is, we house a variety of exhibits. Chuck showed those. We have some World War II and newer aircraft. We've also got a Holocaust museum that's going in, a small exhibit. We have a variety of exhibits. Chuck showed some tractors, and in effect, it shows you right now it's a museum. We get about 50,000 visitors a year, and we have a lot of competition nationally. 200 plus air museums in the country. And in Oregon, there's 9, Washington 14, and California 41. So a lot of competition to go see air museums. So why are we really unique? And part of the uniqueness is we're historic. We are, of those 17 hangars that were constructed, we're the only one that's left in the U.S. which is open to the public on a year-round basis. Since Erickson left in 2015, the museum has seen a 46% revenue decline. We also, significant building deterioration up in the very top. Up in the very top up here, there's a flat area, and it needs to be re-roofed. And in a one-day rainstorm, they have these big sweepers that go through here, and they collect over 500 gallons of water that's come in on the floor. You can kind of see it looks even wet right here. So when they bring the exhibits in, they have to kind of move them off to the sides and keep this open area kind of free. Chuck talked about the Port of Tillamook Bay. I've got a little bit of a different slant, and we were formed by the Port of Tillamook Bay to really focus our attention on the Air Museum, because the port doesn't focus their attention on the Air Museum. They focus it on economic development. They've got a broad range of a charge, a mission, and quite honestly, the museum loses money. And their focus is economic development in the Tillamook area. They've got a lot of flexibility. They can own their own businesses. They can operate their own business. They can also tax. So a little bit and Chuck showed this up here. The museum's an icon in the community, and the port supports our group's efforts to bring about a long-term sustainability of the Air Museum. But here's the port's budget, and the point I'd make here is there's a very small number here of tax revenue coming from property taxes. Now, one option we have to repair the Air Museum is to go to the taxpayers for property taxes. And you'll see in a few minutes why that's maybe kind of a problem, but that is an option. For the museum annual budget itself, again, it shows here that we're losing money. From a budgeted standpoint, actuals, it's about the same, so they're budgeting pretty well there. So we're losing about, what, $70,000 a year. Again, that's not the charge of the Port of Tillamook Bay is to make money, not lose it. And so operating a museum, is that really kind of in their mission? A breakdown of the revenues, the revenue from where they're coming from of this money, $370,000 from museum fees, to come in and to go to the museum. Interesting, the gift shop is $160,000. Well, obviously, if you don't have a museum there, you're not going to have a gift shop. So the gift shop does have a pretty good revenue stream to it. And then there's a sublease to Stimson Lumber. They store lumber in one end of it. And then there's RV storage in there. Sorry, Chuck. No, that's my fault. I was doing something. It's all right. So this is my slant on some of the museum's strengths and weaknesses. I think number one and very, very paramount, it's a historic structure. The opportunities that we have, of course, 1.2 million visitors a year to Tillamook Creamery, the number one tourist attraction in Oregon. We're only 6 miles away. Within 1.5 hours from us is a large population center, 2.2 million people. I'm talking about Clark County in Washington and the Tri-County area in the Portland area. So we have a lot of people in the area. Weaknesses, our population is only 26,000. Median income is about 80% of the state average. We've got some very significant facility deterioration. Some estimates are upwards of $5 to maybe $10 million to completely rehab the building. It's not very attractive from the outside. You see that rust kind of patina on the building. And in fact is, what's interesting is that if you did a survey of all the Tillamook residents and asked them about the Air Museum, they may come back and say, is it still even operational? So even in Tillamook, with a small community the word is really not out there, not getting out there about the museum and that it's operational. Everybody thinks that all the airplanes left in 2015. And of course, as people say, oh, back one. Maybe I did that. People think that there's a decline in museum, aircraft, exhibits, and services, which is really kind of not the case. In fact, we've got some great staff, and I put that from the museum as a benefit. Very energetic staff, very creative. We have a curator that is bringing in and trying to be more, to get more of a hands-on instead of static museum displays, kind of a little more hands-on, simulators and things. And also from the museum side, new exhibits we're talking about. Now, when I say strong support of community, the museum supports the community in a big way. Easter egg hunts for free. Veterans Day, you can come free. There's big displays there. Christmas time, a lot of different things that the museum opens up its doors for free. And so it's got a great community side. A strength for us is going to be your marketing project proposals. And I think I just want to wrap it up with this, Chuck, and just say, really, on behalf of us, we're an organization which, we don't have much money. We're not getting much money from the port, hardly any at all. And so ours is to go out with our hands out and say, can you help us? Can you help with a marketing plan that recognizes that maybe old school is museums, and maybe that's not the right story we want to tell. We were talking with Maryland, we were talking about the Newport Aquarium, and they have changing exhibits. Maybe we need to do a better job of that. But I'd like to leave it up to you folks, because this is really going to be cool to see what kind of ideas that you come up with. Thank you.
Feed you some questions from the audience, and then that way we can have some back and forth. And if there are something, jump in and stuff. But I've got a few questions that and they're all popping up here. We had a lot of great responses, and I'll just feed them to you guys, and then you can have a discussion. And if it's something that we need more data on, I'll be making notes, and that way we can do it. So the first question, without a doubt, and this is a common question, is how drastic of a change is the museum willing to do? How drastic of a change?
Well, I guess I just would throw out, and you talked about it, Chuck, in your remarks, absent something drastic, it could be torn down. And there's a big expense to that. So, we are looking at all options right now. We're looking at total enhancement, which is maybe $10 million to kind of status quo, let it kind of deteriorate as it is. and potentially be a public safety concern, to the other option is just, is vacating it and eventually tearing it down. So we are looking at all options, and I'd suggest that nothing's out of bounds at this point.
I would only add, I would throw that back at you guys and say, it depends on the marketing plan, right? Because we did the math in class, right? So just do it, let's do it one more time. The Tillamook Air Museum gets 1.2 million visitors a year. If we targeted just them and we got half of their customers to come over and spend 20 bucks, that would be $12 million in revenue, right? Now, that's $12 million per year for 10 years. Where's our finance guy? What's the present value of $12 million for 10 years? What, roughly 100 million or 50 million, something? Am I close? Finance guys? Anyway, the point is that with a plan, we could probably get any kind of financing that we needed to put this into gear, right? Because if it's a logical and a well-thought-out marketing plan, we could go with that story, public, private, bond, whatever, and get that going. So that would be my answer. John, if you have anything?
No, I mean, I just recently joined the board, and I'm going to do my part. I run a small foundation and contribute now on, and I'm going to go to a grant writing school up in Astoria, and I'm going to contact every air museum in the country and talk to their finance directors and find out where they get their sources of money. So I'm going to throw everything, all my time at it in that regard. And I just want to say it's wonderful to be in front of all of you, and we really appreciate you giving us the time and then working on a marketing thing for that kind you come up with. And I think together, someday we're going to save this museum, and we're all going to look back and realize what a great thing it is to have actually state of Oregon and to preserve it and to keep it on for future generations to enjoy.
Here's one that I think is provocative or a good one, or not. It's a question. It says, currently, are there places for the guests to buy food inside or outside to eat? And what's the food thing going on?
There's a great, there used to be a cafe there, and then when Erickson left, that cafe ceased to exist. But it's still there. The infrastructure's there. That's part of our mission is to get that cafe back operating.
Is there a food grade kitchen, in other words, a
Yes, it
commercial
is.
kitchen?
Yes, it is.
So there's a commercial kitchen already in place. I think that's probably what they were
Right.
What they were
Yep.
interested in doing. Have you ever considered partnering with the Tillamook Cheese Factory to get more guests? And it's okay to say no.
Yeah, I have not.
Yeah, okay, okay. All right. Just a good one. Are they willing to clear all the artifacts and change the purpose of the space entirely?
Yeah.
And I guess another phrase would be,
Yeah.
who's hooked on Air Museum? Are there constituents? Are there old? And I'm paraphrasing you guys. Are there retired Air Force guys that would be pissed, or something like? Is that kind of what we're doing? I mean, if we came up with, we want to make it a pancake house. I mean, I'm being stupid, but I mean, maybe that's not stupid. I don't know. But we want to make it a submarine museum instead of an air museum, and we had a compelling argument for you. What do you think?
I mean, I'm gonna give, and if you guys want to put this in your proposals, you can. I'll just tell you that one of our newest board members is also a new port commissioner. Her name's Sierra, and she made a recommendation at the first meeting she went to, saying, "How about a VA, a satellite VA hospital?" That's just removing everything and putting offices in there and stuff. So I mean, that would be great for the community. It'd be great for veterans, for people up and down the Oregon coast that have to go over to Portland. So that's one option. So that's kind of an out-of-box option that And even one port commissioner now has suggested as something to look at.
Would you,
Chuck?
oh, sorry, did you want to add something? Oh, we had a question, sorry.
Yes.
What is an FBO?
It's basically airports like where they make money. Like some airports don't. How much money do you guys make
Oh.
for FBO?
See, and I don't know that. That could have been in the revenues of the airport.
That's on the site. There are financials, and there's a 70-page financial, audited financial statement. I think that's easy to get. Tillamook, Port of Tillamook. What's the, give us a little background. You must know something about this.
Well, like a lot of airports have basically operations where people can go in and buy gas, fuel, maintenance.
Right.
Hangar space. Do you guys have, like, from the runway, can planes taxi to the airport?
Yes.
Hangar?
Yes.
And do you guys have hangar spaces that you can tie down? Or, like,
Yes.
do you guys have tie downs outside?
Yes. And I don't know the cost on those, but
We
there
can
is.
get those answers. We can
There
get
is
all
that, and I will say that the Pilots Association at Tillamook is kind of mad at the port because, again, they're not maintaining the asphalt and the runways. There's a lot of rock and things on them, but there is fuel availability. There's hangars there.
Do you guys have maintenance there at all?
No maintenance, I don't believe. They have to ship them out.
When was the last time blimps were there?
I'm going to say about 20 years ago, they were trying to design something, and I forget the name of this craft. It was basically a blimp with 4 big engines on it, like a helicopter, but a blimp, and they were going to use it in the timber harvest industry, and it had a massive failure in it. You had a question in the back?
Yeah, sorry.
So the first question is, preserve the roof. What are the possibilities that we could actually take Hangar B and turn it into a historic building? In which case, you could go towards historical preservation of the roof through local, state, and federal historic societies. That's my first question.
Okay, let me answer that one first. We were listed as in the state of Oregon by the Preservation Society or the Historical Society or something as the #1 most endangered structure in the state of Oregon. And so we are registered in the National Register, and that's the National Historic Register. But then there's a much more. That's like you just apply and you get in on it. So we've got that. We've got that, but we're trying to go to the next level of designation, which I think there's only maybe 1,000 of these in the country. It's of historic places or something like that. And so that's about a 4 or 5 year effort. And once we do that, then the expectation is a lot more grant money becomes available.
But isn't that a double-edged sword in the sense that purposing it, like you couldn't turn it into a VA hospital?
We could not then.
See,
well,
or whatever,
yes.
Right? I mean, we need to know that. That's the point.
Right. Okay.
In other words, his point, I think your point is that if we declared a historical, there's ways to get money. Was that major your point? And I think the answer is yes, but it also could limit our options.
Could.
Is that true?
Yep.
Or we could research that a little more.
I think it's worth researching because there's some limits now. If the structure itself stays intact and the visible from the outside looks the same, and and if you're building freestanding offices inside, that may be okay. But it's.
And you had a follow-up.
First follow-up question is, what time of the year does the Tillamook Air Museum get the most visitors, the most revenue? Is
Yeah,
it
good
summertime,
question.
wintertime months?
It's so quiet in there right now. We're still getting people to come in, but it's really quiet now. Spring vacation will start things up.
Well, in 2015, go back to pre-Erickson. I mean, was there seasonality to it, or that's?
I don't know the 2015 time, except that at least
That would be
right now it's basically a summertime.
Well, they
thing.
saw the video. They saw the video yesterday with the music and the bouncy bounce.
So that leads directly to my third question since it is summertime. One of the things that like the Evergreen Aviation Museum has done is successfully has partnered with Boy Scouts of America, the Cascade Pacific Council, and built a camp there and allowed a lot of stuff that goes on with them for marketing things. The Tillamook Air Museum is right next to probably the single nicest Boy Scout camp in the entire nation. What would be the possibilities that you could, partner with Boy Scouts of America and get Boy Scouts going there, or have events with the Boy Scouts that will help grow the local presence in the Tillamook Air Museum?
Yeah, they are. I mean, that's a
idea.
good idea.
And I also say for group projects, be wary of coming up with brilliant ideas in front of lots of people, because this is a competitive atmosphere.
I will say next month the community college is having a cornhole tournament going on inside the blimp hangar. So we're looking at everything.
Okay, that was the other question. Is Evergreen Aviation Museum, are they related to you?
No, they're not.
Okay. Let me just. You
Go
had a
ahead.
question. Go
Question.
ahead. Did you have something? Yeah.
So, in terms of like the ideas that we're thinking of, obviously we need to think about the budget involved. So realistically, what's a budget that we can think about, just to give kind of like a bound on what we're actually able to do?
Kind of on a marketing budget?
Yeah. Or just for implementing a different kind of service.
Let me take that one.
Go ahead. Yeah, please, please.
Again, I think the way I want to structure that, and the way the group projects work is, and this is a little different than a lot of other classes because this is a marketing class. And I may have said this before, but I'll say this quite a bit as the project unfolds. Your responsibility for the project is to create the market. And what that means, you create the market, and you have to set and justify the 4 Ps. You have to set the price to convince me of the value. You have to show me the products that are going to be involved with this, whether it's merchandising or whether it's restaurant or whether it's some. And you have to set those prices in general and justify that value, right? That's your job. And the product decisions, what goes in there, that's your job. The promotion, and that's your job. Now, what you're not going to be responsible for, and this takes a lot of burden off of a lot of people, and you're not responsible for how much it's going to cost to fix it. You're not responsible for that. You're not responsible for that, and I'll explain that to you in just a second. You're not responsible for how much it's going to cost, and you're not responsible for how it's going to be done. Let me give you an example. You think that the way to attract people is to put a pink roof on there. Now, you don't know anything about pink roofs. We do have construction management people in here. We have people at resources. But no, you don't know anything about a pink roof. But I'm not being funny. I'm just trying to make an example. But you think that a pink roof is something that we want. And you can justify the value in the big picture of things. That's what your job is to do. What I'm telling you right now is I've never worked on a project that has such clear potential for revenue as this. Because as I say, you got 1.2 million people 6 miles away, and that's why Universal Studios is located next to Disneyland rather than locating themselves in Logan, Utah. See? That's why. Okay, so the answer is that. The second thing is you're not responsible for the marketing budget. Now, what does that mean? What that means is if you want to have a Super Bowl ad to promote the Tillamook, the new museum with the pink roof, you go right ahead. You go right ahead and do that. Now, when I'm looking at you and I'm questioning you and I'm saying, well, okay, think of it this way. And I don't know the scope of the plan and what we're doing, but the way I phrase it in this class is, if you're doing a marketing program, if you're doing a marketing plan and you want to come up with something for the Corvallis Farmers Market, and you're going to sell every weekend, and part of your promotional idea is to have a Super Bowl ad, I might ask you a question whether you think that's the right thing to do, right? That's the process we want to go through, right? Because I think that budgets on their face, especially with marketing people, limits what we think we can and can't do. And that's a really important thing. Because I'd rather, and we've had this, and I tell the Shark Tank judges this when they come in, because they don't know. Well, they may know, but they may not know. And I tell these guys, I said, it's conceivable that you have a winning project that can't be done. It doesn't pencil out. It doesn't, something's wrong. Can't be made. Maybe you want the roof to come open in the summer and go back in the thing, and But I would rather err on the idea of being foolish and cool from a marketing perspective than safe and within budget. And I run this class. I just want to make that totally clear for everybody. Go ahead.
So is there any benefit in bringing up like estimates and looking at things
No.
that can't be innovated?
I mean,
Or renovated?
well, I mean, the only benefit of an estimate would be, you don't, I'm gonna be judging the first round, okay? And if I think it's a Super Bowl ad at a farmer's market, I might ask you that. And that may put a trigger in my head, but I'm just a layman, right? So I would suggest all the work that you might do on collecting bids and this sort of thing be focused on creating value. That's what I would focus on. I would focus. Go ahead.
What kind of demographics are the visitors the museum receives right now?
Great question. What is the demographic of your visitors? What do you guess? I mean,
of
your current visitors, right? Current? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty broad, except that I would say it's probably in probably the, I'm going to say in general 50 on up, people looking at historic World War II type exhibits. We're getting more kids coming in there too, though, now. They're trying to be more kid-friendly, but so you get families. But it's really, the museum is right now, it's just kind of, you come in, you kind of wander around, and it's kind of self-directed. There's no guides or anything of that sort.
I've got one. Have you ever done air shows like they do in Madras? And would you consider that, or are there regulations and stuff? Could we pull that off?
Yeah.
Could we be cooler than I've never been to them. It was a question I just got. They must do air shows.
No, yeah, we could really be cool. In fact, the Madras airplanes, when they were at Tillamook, they were all flyable. And this is a bad story, but so they were gearing up to the point of having an air show at Tillamook. And so a gentleman kind of helped run the museum, air exhibits, was in a MiG with a aviation photographer in the back on the thing on the day before this thing, just taking some loops around and crashed and died.
Oh.
So that was the end of that air show stuff. So it was, but not to say, again.
Did you have a question? You forgot it. The other one, I'll go back to your comment because I see frustration in you, and I want to kind of make clear. Look at it this way. What's the marketing value? This Sunday is the Super Bowl, and everybody's going to be watching the commercials. Maybe we'll see a Dunkin' commercial, and you'll think I'm a genius. Maybe not. I don't know. What's the value of Budweiser's Clydesdale on the Super Bowl commercial? And what's the value of horses with a dog in the rain and people crying? I mean, what's the value of that? It's impossible. The other one is what is the? And I actually had this conversation with someone at Nike because the first deal they ever did for an endorsement was Michael Jordan, and I knew the guy that did that, and it was the first they ever did. And I said, how in the hell did you price that? Because I'm thinking of it from a marketing. How did you know? How much did you? No one had ever done it before. How much did you give him? How did you decide? He said, had no idea. Just tried to figure out something. But it worked. Nike's profitable. They've done it 12 other times. And that's what I want to encourage you to think about. That's where making a mistake, I don't give you a fault for. I know that all the construction guys are going over to Reno this weekend, and they're having a competition, and I hope they bring back the winning troop. But in that business, being close and being on budget, that's their business, and that is very, very important. But we're ahead of this curve. We're in this stage, and that's what I want you to start. That's what I want you to embrace and think about. Okay, got a couple more. Is there a helicopter pad? Is there a Can you land a helicopter?
Yeah, you could.
Okay.
Yeah, yes. Yes.
Here's one. Currently, it's listed that the museum has an F-14 Tomcat, which is the same aircraft flown in the movie Top Gun. You could use that notoriety from the movie to bring people in to see the plane and maybe get a picture inside of it. pretty good idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Good
You
idea.
just gave it to the whole class. Let me see. I've got a bunch here. I'm going to try to pick the. We're going to, let's see here.
It's pretty cool technology.
Has the space ever been rented out for events? Are you open up to that idea?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is. And we encourage those events.
All right.
Fact is, all those planes under that tent, they will move those out, and they've had upwards of, 500 people in there for dinner.
Do you consider RV storage a space weakness?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd rather have it be one really cool museum.
Does it echo?
Yeah, it's not a very warm space, meaning that it's kind of damp and it's a little bit dark. We just had new LED lights put in there, but it does echo.
Okay. Good one. Is alcohol allowed in the museum?
Sure.
There we go. What about marijuana?
No, I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know.
That was my question. I don't know.
Probably is. I don't know. Back in the RV storage area.
Yeah. What? Okay, that's good. Okay, here's one. This is a good discussion, and we'll get time for a couple more. As an air museum, the Tillamook Air Museum is not competing well in the market, okay? Evergreen Air Museum is doing 8 times the revenue, is only 45 minutes from Portland, and is bright, dry, and warm. What do you got to say for yourself?
That's a good discussion. Let's talk about it.
I'll lead that off.
That's why I'm here.
I'll lead that off. Does anybody know the financial condition of the Evergreen Aviation Museum? I can tell you for a fact it's in Chapter 11, and it's been seized by the banks because Evergreen was Evergreen Aviation across the street, and they had the contract to fly the CIA people all over the world. And they either lost the contract or they got caught with their hand in the till, but Evergreen Aviation Museum had to go through Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and now the future of the Evergreen Air Museum, however much value it is in question. So what does that mean? Is there an opportunity to do things? That's up to you, isn't it? Okay.
Question in the back. Yes, there would be. In fact, the Spruce Goose originally was going to be heading up to the Tillamook, Air Museum. And it got shanghaied midway in a right-hand turn. But no, seriously, it was. So.
Is there any possibility to bring? They want to know why Erickson got pissed off and left. Is there a way to bring him back, or is that lost?
I don't know.
You don't know. It's not that. Yeah, we could visit that, couldn't we?
The one thing about it is that in the whole museum kind of industry, there's a lot of sharing of different exhibits and even aircraft. A lot of individual owners of aircraft would love to house them in a space, and so Erickson could be approached to say, do you have any extra aircraft you could move over into us and stick out the olive branch to them.
That actually might be a good thing to research. Is there's probably, I didn't realize there were so many air museums around. There's probably a brokerage service of some kind. There's probably a market of people that buy and sell and trade these things. I bet there is. What's your current social media presence?
We've got, we have a website, and we have you can donate on that website. We're linked to the Tillamook Air Museum. We're FOTAM, Friends of Tillamook Air Museum. We're linked to the Air Museum website, which is also linked to the Port of Tillamook Bay website.
Have you considered repurposing the building to be a space and air museum, given the fact you're neighbors with?
Yes, yes, and in fact, I think that's a good idea because we got the Johnson Near Space Centers, as Chuck has talked about, and there's a great connection between they and us, the Air Museum, and so there may be some opportunities there to put some lighter than air aircraft in there.
Here's one. There's been a lot of technological progress in blimp technology in the last 10 years. Have you seen any of those at the museum, or have they landed, or have they showed up? Or
No, again, I'd go back to that Johnson Near Space.
Okay.
I mean, they're on the technology edge, and we have a relationship with them. So.
I think that covers.
I would say one quick thing.
Sure.
That John mentioned to me. Again, in the museum industry, a big source of aircraft are retired aircraft out of the Air Force, Army, helicopters, and Navy. And so, the way it works is, I mean, we could have, aircraft that are just retired. We have to move them in. We have to move them from whatever location. So that could be $20,000, $30,000. But we can get additional aircraft in.
This is a good one. Are there any structural drawings available of the place? Because making, apparently from an engineering perspective, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and the answer is no.
Okay.
Not design type drawings. We've got a lot of photographs of how it's constructed, but no design prints.
Do you have any relationship with Boeing?
No, but we're willing to learn.
Is there any mass transit between the cheese factory and the museum? Is there a bus system, a shuttle?
There is a bus system, but I'm not sure if they go to the Air Museum or not. They definitely go to the cheese factory, creamery.
Okay. What is the price to get in? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Is there what?
The grounds outside the museum for access to it, like, can you use that space?
Yes. Yeah, there is quite a bit of access outside. Some of it's fenced because it's part of the airport, but it could easily be kind of repurposed. And the cost I think is $9 is what it costs to go into the museum.
One of the things that I want to mention, we're about at the end of our time here. One of the things I wanted to mention is Marilyn Reed, who runs our design department, was in a meeting before, and she was fortunate enough to sit in. And one of the things that she said to us that made a lot of sense in this whole idea of combining design with marketing and construction engineering and people like yourself. We even have a nuclear engineer, a major nuclear, yeah.
Good.
And the idea, though, of this whole notion of being able to create a story that's easily told and understood, that makes it and I'll do a lecture on after the midterm on Tuesday. I'll do a lecture on branding, but I think I want to incorporate this whole story idea with the branding, because I think that's the formative issue, right? We've got this. I mean, I thought about this myself, and I thought. And again, I'm biased, and I'm an old guy, so whatever you're doing, don't do it for me, because I'm headed up to the happy ground here in a few minutes, right? But
I hope not.
Your generation is the people. What you need to think about is what's the place you're going to take your kids to? What do you want to do? How do you want to get value? To me, from my biased perspective, if I didn't even know it was the largest free-span wooden structure in the world, I'd pay $20 if they, just to have it cleared out and have it empty. I would pay $20 just to walk around, because people go to the Empire State Building and it's not even in the top 20 tallest buildings in the world. It's because it has a story, and this thing has got a story, and it's the way you put the story together, combined with the value proposition and the promotional activities that you're doing, will make this thing sing. And that's the point. Go ahead.
I have a question. Any of us students go to the Air Museum to visit, and you guys let us go in for free?
Yes. They can get in for free if they want to visit.
Yeah.
What do? They go up and they say, we're friends of Bruce,
Yeah, friends of Bruce will work. Or
Don't say you're friends with me, they'll
be part
charge
of
you
this
double.
class, and, yeah, I'll clear it, and so, meaning I'll clear it when we get back, and so if you guys go there and wanna go.
Oh, and I did want to announce, go ahead, Marilyn.
The port would have the plans for the building, could maybe provide the plans or.
No, we don't. We did not, I've asked for architectural plans, design prints, and the port even doesn't have them. Now, potentially, since this building was replicated in other parts of the country, maybe they're over there. I don't, but the port does not have them.
Okay. And then the final thing, we've gone through all this, and I think this was very beneficial to have this conversation. And I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Marilyn and I are going to get together after this, we're going to have a conference at some point. And I want to thank these fellows. I do want to mention that they made a generous offer that I'm going to extend to you folks, and that the winning presentation of the Shark Tank, the winner, they will get a $500 cash prize directly from the museum in exchange for the ability to see this thing through. So with that, I think you should give a big hand to our guests.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And have a great weekend. We'll hang around a little bit, and if you want to come up and just say hi or whatever. Thank you very much.